My name is Herm Card, and welcome to World Photography Day, August 19th, 2020. And I would like to start off by thanking the DeWitt and Jamesville Community Library for sponsoring this workshop entitled Don't Be Afraid to Be Lucky. Now, because of current situations, we're not actually in the Community Library of DeWitt and Jamesville. We are instead coming to you from the annex of the Community Library of DeWitt in Jamesville, which is located in my wife's art studio in our basement in Syracuse. Now, keep in mind that this is a mechanical operation. This is technical. This is YouTube. So you are, in fact, pretty much in charge of what happens, because you can pause this at any time to rewatch any parts. You can pause it to go have a snack. You can rewind to watch any of the tips, to pick up any of the pointers, or to watch the photos again. So pretty much you're in charge here. Except for a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, please silence your cell phone during the workshop. And the emergency exit is located to my right, your left on the screen. Primarily, I consider myself a sports photographer. I have worked for the Eagle newspapers, and I have worked for other organizations as a photographer. Most of my career, the way I identify myself, actually as a teacher. I taught English for 32 years in the Marcellus School District, and currently teach a course in the Newhouse School at Syracuse University in the broadcast digital journalism department on the relationship between visual imagery and sports writing. So here you see I am sort of with nothing to do, sitting in the stands, no ball game. But in my career, I have photographed quite a bit of sports, much of it for the Eagle newspapers or other organizations. So a lot of the sports I've been fortunate enough to photograph are something on the unusual side. Essentially, as a sports photographer, I look for opportunities, and here was an opportunity that I ran across this February in Phoenix, Arizona, where I had the chance to shoot my first ever NASCAR race. And the very next day, I was able to shoot my first ever tortoise race in the Phoenix Zoo. So I enjoy wildlife photography as well as sports photography and other types. Here, a couple of coyotes in Phoenix, perhaps considering me as their lunch. I'm a dog lover. This is a shot from the sheepdog trials in Cooperstown, the annual event. Great event, seeing dogs running, chasing sheep, enjoying themselves, far more perhaps than this particular sheep enjoyed himself. I shoot events at the State Fair. We include the Birthing Center, which is just a great opportunity to see nature in action. I don't shoot much portrait photography. However, this young woman posed for me at the Albuquerque Zoo a couple of years ago. I shoot wildlife with my camera, not with guns. This is an eagle at Destiny, USA in the winter in the area between the mall and the lake. I like to shoot at Montezuma Wildlife Sanctuary. Here's a heron saying goodnight, heading off into the sunset. As you will see, probably have already seen, much of nature is where you find it. This butterfly happened to be on the main street of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where I was in town to photograph a Little League World Series. And this shot I particularly like. It's a deer actually behind the Community Library of DeWitt in Jamesville. I volunteer for several veterans organizations and shoot their events, which is at the State Fair, events at the War Memorial, and other veterans happenings. I like the State Fair. A lot of unusual stuff going on out there. Most of it very photographable. I enjoy urban photography. Here you see scenes from the Syracuse area. I enjoy traveling. Here are some tourist shots from, we have Winslow, Arizona, we have Rome, we have Monument Valley, Utah, we have a statue of Oscar Wilde sitting on a large boulder in Dublin, and we have a sunset over the lake near my home in Syracuse. This is at Hiawatha Lake in Upper Onondaga Park. And as many people are prone to do, I shoot the occasional selfie. No baseball, but still some great photography of this, for example, the empty seats in Fenway Park. And over my career, I've been lucky enough to work for the Syracuse Chiefs, now the Syracuse Mets, so much of my baseball photography has been in that particular location, as that's where these shots are from. Some pretty interesting shots available in any ball game. This particular shot, excuse me, young man playing in the Challenger baseball program in Syracuse, the largest program of its kind in the country, and it's just a remarkable opportunity for me, humbling opportunity for me to shoot in an area where the spirit and the energy is just unbelievably high. Okay, don't be afraid to be lucky. That's the title of the workshop. And let's see what that's all about. All right, those of us who are photographers sort of operate under the operation or the misapprehension sometimes that it's really tricky and it's highly technical and it's some sort of mystical science. Well, that's not true. But in order to be a good photographer, in order to enjoy photography, we need to understand several things. So here's kind of a flow chart of some of the things that we need to pay attention to. Goals, philosophy, equipment, notice luck on the right side, preparation, eye, action, and results. And again, luck seeming to be an associated factor. So let's talk about some of these elements. Goal, for example. What's the purpose of your photography? I mean, what do you want to accomplish? Why are you doing it? Goals will vary depending on your individual interests, but don't let the pursuit of a goal diminish your enjoyment of the act itself. Taking photographs by itself is enjoyable. In the digital age, we're not inhibited by the length of a roll of film or the cost of processing, as many of us who are older remember the days when you sort of had to pick your moments to take a photograph because you were paying for the film that it was being captured on. You were also going to pay to have it processed unless you did that yourself, and you were committing yourself to a limit of how many photos you could take. Most rolls had either 24 or 36 photos on them. So I think photographers had to be much more careful back in the day, as they say. Now, keep in mind your goal does not have to be easily definable. Just enjoying the act of photography can be enough. Now, let's think about philosophy. What do you consider to be a good, and that's in quotes, photograph? That's a question with as many possible answers as the question, what do you consider a good sandwich? The answer is very individualized and very much up to personal preference. Think Dead Poets Society. Do not get caught up in the thinking that in order for it to be a good photo, it has to meet certain technical criteria. If you remember, the main character, played by Robin Williams, debunked a philosophy itself in a textbook that said you could plot the worth of a poem on a graph based on certain aspects in terms of technical expertise or perhaps meaning. You can't do that with a photo. Very subjective in dealing with photography, as it is with poetry, as it is with many things. So we might consider a good photo to be one that, in a sense, serves a purpose. That is to say, it might bring back pleasant memories, evoke emotion, or simply support your slideshow of last summer's vacation. For a photojournalist, it might support a story or inspire one. One of the points I make with my students is just that a photograph itself can be the start of a story rather than something that just supports the story they've already written. Regardless, technical merit would likely be secondary to the effect of the photo. Now, this is not a technically great photo. It's my neighborhood chipmunk, Chip, invading the bird feeder, sort of a guilty look on his face. Technically, it's not superior because he's a little fuzzy around the chin. It's not totally focused on him. The white posts in the center sort of distract from him. Then you could say, well, yes, but they lend a certain amount of mystery. He's hiding behind this post. So again, subjectivity. Not a great technical photo, but definitely one of my favorite photos. Equipment. Know your camera, work according to your gear's capabilities. Photographers are gadget freaks. It's easy to get caught up in the technology. We become fascinated with the capabilities of modern cameras, but the safest thing to remember is that the best camera is the one we have with us. If we're comfortable with the results we get from cameras in our cell phones, that's all we need. Now, an example of this. This is not a great photo. This is a cell phone photo I took at a minor league baseball game in Maryland. I left my camera intentionally in the car because I didn't want to get into that busman's holiday where I was taking photographs when I was trying not to be taking photographs. But the moment presented itself when these geese landed on the field. Took out my cell phone, took this shot. Not a great technical shot. The pitcher is not focused. The second baseman is cut off in the middle. The backstop is in the photo. But the image is of something that's very unusual. A couple of geese on the ball field, and they stayed there for quite some time. That makes it a good photo. It's the content here, not so much the technical merit of the photo itself. This shot, again, taken with my cell phone at NBT Stadium. I was playing around with some of the settings, and it had a sepia setting on it, so I tried this out. It's not technically a good photo because the lights are too bright. They're blown out. The sepia part's fine. It's what I would call an art photo. I like it. And there's another tip. When you take bad photos, just tell people they're art photos. Tell them you did it intentionally. All right, let's talk about preparation. What do you do before you shoot? Now, these next few tips may seem a bit oversimplified, but I will tell you I have made each of the mistakes in these next few slides more than once. In fact, I've made 2 of them today. Make sure the battery is in your camera and it's charged. This applies to your cell phone as well. Make sure it's charged. The camera battery going out into the field for a shoot that's only at 25% is probably going to be enough for a couple of shots, but it's inadequate for a long afternoon of shooting. So make sure the battery's in the camera. Make sure it's charged. And I always try to take along an extra battery if I'm going to anytime I'm shooting something that's in the obligatory shooting, like a ball game, or if I'm going out to do some wildlife and I'm going to be there some time, I take an extra battery. Cell phone, you take along a charger. All right, make sure the camera is turned on. If you are going to shoot something with your camera, it has to be on. Don't wait till you see what you want to shoot and then turn it on. That's too late. When the squirrel is climbing on my bird feeder in the backyard and that camera's off, by the time I've turned it on, he's gone. And I've missed an interesting photo. SD card, that's where your content is stored. So make sure you have the SD card in the camera. Cell phones internally store photos, but you can also put an SD card in there. Make sure it's formatted, which is something you would do the first time you put it into your camera. And make sure there's sufficient room on it. Turning the camera on, ready to take a photo, and seeing this message is not only discouraging, it's your fault because it was an error you should not have made. I make this error frequently by putting the SD card in my computer to look at the photos and then not putting it back. Make sure the lens cap is off. Sounds simple, right? This morning I tried to take a photo with the lens cap on. This is what a photo looks like with the lens cap on. Now you can tell people it's a photo of the inside of a railroad tunnel, but that's not going to work too many times. Okay, once you've mastered those essentials, you are ready to shoot, but you may not be totally prepared. Given that you have the basic familiarity with your equipment, there are things you should do every time you intend to photograph. And what I mean by that is if it's in your mind that you're going to shoot some photos, these are things you need to do. If you are going out with the intention of spending time in a certain area or shooting a certain subject, you need to do these things, regardless of what my goal is for the session. Whether it's wildlife, sports, an event, or simply a day out with my camera, I try to do three things: anticipate, set up, and practice. Anticipating is simply thinking ahead. Consider your plan for your outing. What do you intend to do? Why are you where you are? If your intent is to just drive around town, okay, that is you have to anticipate where are you going to go. What are you going to find? If you're shooting a baseball game, what am I going to shoot at that ball game? Do I want to get pitchers? Do I want to get action? Do I want to get batters? And then setting up is getting yourself and your equipment in position and ready. Now here's an example. My intent here was to get a photo of adult ospreys. Actually, I was very specific. I wanted to see an osprey bringing a meal to these juvenile ospreys. So my setup here was simply I went to where they were. I knew that if you have 3 juvenile ospreys in a nest and the adults are not there, they're coming back at some point, probably not too much later, with some food. So I set my camera. I had my camera on my tripod. I was set up. I took a few practice shots, what we'll talk about in a second. I waited, and it paid off. Mother, or perhaps father osprey, not too much later, came back with lunch. It's a pretty good sized fish. So, in a sense, I made this possible by my anticipation and my setup. And the ospreys made it possible by the fact that I understood what they do. All right, talking about practicing simply means that once you are set up to shoot, take shots of the area, your target area, as it were, to ensure that your settings, even if you're shooting on automatic, will produce acceptable results. Take some shots of like I say, the target area to maximize your possibilities for success. So this particular shot was as the result of practice. It's a field hockey playoff game. The winner goes to the state tournament. The losers go home. I was assigned the next game. I was photographing this game simply to check the light, to get a good position to shoot towards the goal area and understand the layout of the field. The result was that at the end of this sudden victory playoff, this is the photo I took as a practice photo, and looking at it the next day, discovered the wonderful moment of victory for the team on the left, and defeat, as it were, for the 2 young players on the right. But the photo now has an emotional impact because of the fact that the young woman is consoling her teammate, who through no fault of her own had let the winning goal go past her. How is this lucky? It's lucky because of the setup, for one thing, but my anticipation paid off in this, and sort of the irony to this photo is that the young woman's father, the young woman in black who is consoling her teammate, took this photo. I had sent him, or the school, the photo, and he got it and sent this one back to me. This is a terrific photo. It's a terrific action photo of the winning team. There's wonderful facial expressions. There's action. There's hair flying around. But ironically, the thing that would have been most important to him, his daughter, is not in the picture simply because of his position. Now, when I say I mean beware of opportunities. I tell my sports media students to shoot away from the ball. That is, expand your field of vision. Look around. All the action is not in front of you. There are things to shoot, meaningful things to shoot, all around you. Now, this photo was a every night occurrence at the Syracuse Mets games. A young fan racing a mascot. It's a highlight of the game for the young man. The mascot usually loses, so you see those 2 involved. But look at the photo. Now, that's what I was taking. I was shooting the race, but look in the depth of the photo, and you'll see what really is the meaningful aspect of this. It's the professional baseball player giving this young fan a baseball. Look at the expression on that youngster's face. This is the sort of the essence of what's really good about sports, and how young people can enjoy sports for reasons other than what's going on in the field. I'm not so happy that the guy in the middle of that Red Sox jacket's there, but being a Yankee fan, but I'm an equal opportunity photographer. this is a good photo. It was a tourist photo, and I was riding a tourist tram in Monument Valley, Utah. And the idea of I comes into play here because I was paying attention to the fact that in front of this ancient mountain is a modern convenience that looks remarkably the same in shape. At the Corning Museum of Glass, which is a wonderful place for photography, there's this giant glass string of pearls, and I asked my wife if she would stand behind it. So seeing the string of pearls and my wife there, I just sort of created my own juxtaposition. So I used the idea of I to create a scene. All right, action. What do you actually do? You're out there with your camera. Push the shutter button. Do not waste opportunity. And the more the better. Usually in modern age, you can take an awful lot of photos and then go back and see what you've got. I have a friend I sit with at NBT Stadium who delights in reminding me of the several times I've missed good shots because we were talking or I wasn't really paying attention and things were going on in the field, or I actually failed to follow through on some of my own advice. In one case, the play seemed over. It was a bunt. The pitcher came in, picked up the ball. Here's the action. I'm going to get a good photo of him throwing to first. He dropped the ball. I stopped shooting. He fell to his knees and started laughing. That was the photo. And I missed it. Take as many shots as you can. Keep shooting. In a park in Scottsdale, Arizona, filled with birds, I followed the flight of this pelican who was coming in for a landing, and I love bird landing action shots. So this pelican flew, landed, and in so doing, irritated this heron who took off. Flew in front of me, and in front of that line of cormorants who seemed to be judging his flight perhaps, made a right turn, flew over my head, and landed in this tree next to me. So the fact that I kept shooting enabled me to get a sequence of shots, and each of those shots individually turned out to be a pretty good photo. Okay, let's talk about luck. Now, according to Branch Rickey, who was the man who made it possible for Jackie Robinson to play Major League Baseball, luck is the residue of design. And I modify that for my own workshop purposes to say don't be afraid to be lucky, because often we create our own luck. Now, even though the title of the workshop has to do with luck, it's obviously not the major influence on photography. We've seen that. But trust me, it has its place. Now, luck is not so much an element of the action of photography or the act of photography, but it's more in what presents itself in terms of opportunity. In a series of photos we're going to see, I'll explain how the items on the flowchart contributed to the final product, but also explain how the element of luck played an important part in it. Now, this photo, it's an action photo I took for the Eagle of a man named Dawan Coleman playing. It was a high school sectional finals when he played for Jamesville High School, and he went on to play for Syracuse University. His shirt is folded just right to say Jamville as he's jamming the basketball. No anticipation possibly could have made that moment happen. A friend of mine, Ron Trinka, pointed out to me after I actually hadn't seen that myself the first time I looked at it, or many times. This is a bowling shot. Bowling shots are not terribly exciting. In fact, since they've changed the pin setters so that the sweeper comes down as the ball passes a sensor, you can't even get those old-time shots of the ball smashing pins around. So I needed some shots of this tournament. It was a major tournament in town, and I needed some shots, and I was walking along behind the lanes just taking pictures of bowlers, and I happened to shoot this woman just rolling the ball. And then I happened to look at the scoreboard to see that this shot was the last shot on which she got 9 pins to miss a 300 game by 1 pin. So that was not so much a great shot as it was an ironic shot. I guess that I had taken a shot of her just missing a 300 game. And as a good journalist I am, I said to her as she walked back, I said something clever like, "Yikes." And she said, It doesn't bother me so much that I miss a 300 game because I've had 35 of them, but it'll only bother me if I lose the tournament by 1 pin. I don't know what the outcome of the tournament was, but I thought it was a pretty clever line, inspired by my really good journalism technique. I thought this was a photo of a male cardinal in our neighbor's yard, and it was. But again, looking at the computer the next day, I noticed it was also a female cardinal, fairly well camouflaged, and they were sharing lunch together, Mr. and Mrs. Cardinal having lunch. This shot was another of my all-time favorites, particularly because it was lucky. I was photographing the Veterans Day Parade on South Salina Street in Syracuse, heard the planes come over, aimed the camera, sort of, I thought, snapped it twice, and then the next day looked at it and found this photo. This is one of those things where people ask me how I did that, and I tell them jokingly, and I hope they don't believe me, that I had called Hancock Field to find out what time the flyover would be, and then set up there to take that shot. And just for your information, the significance is that the formation is called the Missing Man Formation, and it honors pilots who have failed to return from missions. This man is not on fire. This is simply a matter of juxtaposition of flame effects in front of him during a performance by a group called Nitro Circus, they do motorcycle and bicycle stunts. And this was out at the ballpark, and it happened to be that this flamethrower tower was between me and him, and it looks like he's on fire. This man is on fire. The luck here, well, the luck for him is that he has a Nomex suit on, and it's at a high diving performance at the New York State Fair. He's diving into a pool below where the flames were extinguished. He has a Nomex suit on, so he's not on fire. The suit is. The luck, well, only that the director of the group performing and I had become friends a couple of years before when I was photographing them, and he told me I should come out this night because we're setting somebody on fire. Not a good photo, other than the fact that for the effect of the photo, but it's again not technically sound. It's not a technically great photo, but it's a great photo in the sense it's of a very interesting moment. I was standing in a driveway in Phoenix practicing shots of the moon, trying to get a little bit of focus, and before I put the camera even on the tripod, and hand holding this, a plane flew between me and the moon. No, I did not check flight patterns. Again, luck. Doing one thing, practicing one thing, and another photo showed up. The juxtaposition here could not be anticipated. I could not possibly have set up to wait for the moment when a soccer ball would go between the goalkeeper and that arrow saying, shoot here. In my driveway, a patch of ice, which happened to look pretty much like our dog Molly. All I did with this was I rotated it, because when I took the photo, I didn't exactly see what it was, and I took it at a different angle and then just had to rotate it 90 degrees to make it look like a dog. It already looked like a dog. At the Watchfire, which is a ceremony every year at the fairgrounds where flags are retired with honors in a huge bonfire, I took a lot of photos of the flames, and looking at them the next day on the computer, saw this one, which looked a little bit, actually quite a bit, like some kind of a critter, a fox perhaps, or a dog, or a wolf. That's its nose, ears, and mouth. Who among us have not found ourselves without a handkerchief when we needed one? This squirrel sitting on my fence apparently had that same problem, but he had something with him that he could solve the problem with. At a wildlife preserve in Gilbert, Arizona, these three turtles apparently were attending a lecture by that heron on the left. Cannot anticipate such things. You have to see them. This is part of looking around. This is part of eye. This is how eye sometimes leads you to luck. first thing your eye is drawn to here is that duck, the mallard right in the middle, as was mine when I walked by it at near sunset and took that photo and did not see the duck that's to the upper left of him. The light, that is the light. It was a very odd light, and at least that's how it came out on the camera. So I hadn't seen that second duck. Now here's Molly looking out the window at the vets, wishing she was out somewhere other than where she was. The luck here, well, that she posed for me, I guess was lucky in a sense, but the fact that I did not have a camera, I had my cell phone, and I had been messing around with it earlier and taking black and white photos, and so I took this in black and white, which worked out well because Molly is in black and white. The best camera sometimes is the one you have with you. This was intentional in that she was walking around in the garden and in the hostas, in and out of the hostas, and I had been taking her photos, but again, this is not the kind of photo you can anticipate. She happened to be set up just in a spot that only her eyes showed out of the hostas. I guess you'd say it's lucky because you very seldom see a heron and a mourning dove having a conversation. The luck here, well, I hate to say that an algae bloom creates luck, but in Hiawatha Park, or in Hiawatha Lake in Upper Onondaga Park, a couple of years ago, the city water department lowered the water because of algae blooms, and which exposed these 3 rocks. Now, there are never cormorants or egrets in this park. There are always those turtles. But because the rocks were exposed for some reason, and there was some vegetation exposed, these birds started hanging out there. And one afternoon I was driving by with my camera and saw them in the park, and by the time I pulled into the parking lot, they had arranged themselves like that. I actually got some shots of them arranging themselves. But luck, plain luck. Just happened to be the circumstance of driving by at the time these critters were getting together for a meeting. I guess the luck here wasn't so much the photo, but it was the fact that I saw a hummingbird at all. And this was in Gilbert, Arizona, and I took a lot of shots. This is part of the idea of push the shutter button, because you're not going to take one photo generally and be lucky enough to get the hummingbird's tongue out, especially when it's not actually eating something. So I took probably 75 photos of this bird at one angle or another and got this one. The best camera is the one you have with you. I happen to have a tourist camera with me in Tucson, Arizona at a wildlife preserve, and got this photo. Again, lucky enough to see a hummingbird at all, but to have his shadow also in the picture, and to have the camera capture him pretty good. It was probably a burst of 5 or 6 photos, and this one was the best. This critter is called a gerenuk. It's an African deer, antelope type thing, common enough in a zoo. This was in the Phoenix Zoo, but what obviously is uncommon and lucky for me is this rabbit stopped by to share lunch. Don't usually see rabbits and these critters together as far as I can tell. So again, juxtaposition luck. Drove into the driveway one day. There was this squirrel apparently working a joystick on maybe a video game that involved a pumpkin, but he was just sitting there and hanging on, and apparently smiling. Sometimes anticipation pays dividends that you don't really expect. My anticipation here with these starlings was that I was sitting in my backyard taking photos of something else and heard kind of an odd noise, and the odd noise was these 3 youngsters who had taken advantage of my neighbor's bad luck by making a nest inside his porch. Again, knowing that if there are young birds around squawking, there's an adult out there somewhere getting lunch, and shortly thereafter, either mother or father starling showed up with lunch, much to the delight of the kids. Here's the luck. I had been sitting at the well, it was the Inner Harbor in Syracuse for quite some time, photographing ospreys flying around, and decided that was enough for the day because I hadn't had anything really that satisfied me. So as I was getting in the car, for some reason, I looked up, and when I looked up, this osprey was flying over, and I snapped my last 3 photos of the day, went home, looked at them, and saw the fish. He had not had a fish all day, he had not had anything all day, just flying around. And so this shot, the last shot of the day, turned out to be the luck. Well, the luck here is simply the juxtaposition of this facility and that mountain that happen to look like each other. My little friend Chip, sitting on the meditating frog in the garden, apparently seeking some great answer to questions like the meaning of life, at least the meaning of chipmunk life. It's a more serious sort of moment. This was in my hometown of Endicott, New York, and the wind was blowing at the Veterans Memorial, the War Memorial in Endicott, and just so that the flags were all lined up beautifully. And I took the photo, and I looked the next day, and this is one of those sort of message photos, the way I interpret it, is to see a stop sign at the end of a war memorial. Certainly, you could justify saying this is a symbol to stop war. And this is the type of thing that I actually get into in my class at Newhouse, about how photographs can inspire stories. That this would be a starting point rather than the conclusion of to support something. This might be the starting point of a story. Here's a young man with a shoulder injury at the ballpark. As I was leaving, I saw him. I took his photo, and which is no big deal and no essential meaning to the photo other than the fact that when I asked him how he heard it and he told me, I realized that I had a photo of him sustaining that injury, throwing a T-shirt dressed up as a coffee cup. Now the irony, it certainly has a certain amount of humor to it, and the irony attached is that he had been a catcher for the University of Pittsburgh and then had played a couple of seasons of independent league baseball as a catcher, and here he is injuring himself throwing a T-shirt. This is the duck itself is not so much the photo, it's as the small ducks here you see in the circle that seem to be idolizing it or worshiping it. The luck here has to do with the essence of the photo, that these two women are tied together. As you notice, there's a tether between them, and the reason is that one of them is not sighted. And I didn't know this was going on. I was taking photos of the Mountain Goat Run in Syracuse, which is a 10-mile race held every year, and the fact that a friend of mine was writing this story, Sean Kirst was writing a story about them, clued me in later to look back and see the photo, and I asked my students which one is sighted and which one is not, and they suggest that the woman on the left is sighted because she has a watch on. I posed a question about a Braille watch, and we go from there, and when they asked me which one, I don't know. I didn't find out which one was blind, which was sighted, because I didn't need to. The story is obviously inspired by the photo, the fact that a woman is overcoming great odds and that she's being helped by someone who's devoting herself to helping her. The luck being that I had taken the photo, and then I found out from my friend what it actually was about. This was not the photo I intended to take. This photo was actually of a pitcher throwing the ball. There was a pitcher, the batter, catcher in it, and then when I looked at it the next day, I spotted the blurry sign. For those of you who either can't read it or aren't aware of what LASIK is, it's eye surgery to correct vision problems. Not a great photo of the ball. It's sort of in semi in focus, pretty decent enough focus for the photo. Kind of interesting shot of a Roman senator statue and a Roman historic enactor dressed as a senator and waiting for a bus. Not a great photo because there's a certain amount of similarity between the color of the statue and the trees behind it, so it's not necessarily a great shot, but good enough. Nearby, I spotted this woman, and I just liked the composition the way her body curves. She's wearing a backpack. She has sneakers on. I just thought it to be an interesting photo as she was walking by. Again, luck of position. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And if you anticipate and you have your camera turned on, things like that, all that preparation pays off. Same trip, Sistine Chapel. Pretty good photo. Why is it lucky? Well, partly lucky because you're not supposed to take photos in the Sistine Chapel, and if you do, you can get caught by the Swiss guards. They throw you out. The actual photo was lucky because since you can't take photos, I had a camera with a Wi-Fi release. I put the camera on the floor between my feet, tripped the shutter with a one shot with a Wi-Fi release, and it focused very well. The color's very good. That's very lucky. And again, I was lucky because the Swiss guard didn't notice and didn't throw us out. This shot is lucky. I really love the shot. Again, one of my favorites. The luck here is involved with the fact that it's wasn't part of what I was aiming. It wasn't what I was aiming at. I was taking a sort of a panoramic shot of people at the lectern or on the stage at the War Memorial ceremony on Veterans Day. And this Marine and his daughter were looking out the window. The light was hitting them just right, or actually they were looking up towards the flags that were outside. They were being mentioned, and I call this one. I mentioned it's a Marine with the two things he's sworn to protect: his family and his flag. All right, this is the last one of the real photos here. I'll show you a couple of sort of unlucky ones after this, but the luck here is Winslow, Arizona, spending some time standing on the corner. At this time of year, it's the only time of year that the sun sets behind the San Francisco peaks, which are 60 miles away in Flagstaff. It's very unusual to have this train yard pretty much empty and have the sun just shining off the rails, which are usually filled. Okay, results. Only you have to be satisfied. Even though the saying that the journey is more important than the destination holds true philosophically, it's pretty annoying to look at a blurry image of what could or should have been a great photo. Now, trust me, I have plenty of shots that are blurry, badly lit, and overexposed. The ones I showed you tonight were some pretty good photos. I'm going to show you a couple that they were just mistakes. I mean, this is just to prove that you get some bad luck, and not all luck is good luck. Overexposed, terrible shot of an umpire having just tossed out the coach. It isn't even aimed very well. Game-winning home run, underexposed and unusable. Trying to get a photo of this batter, the umpire just before the pitch stepped into my line, so I didn't get the batter hitting the ball. And as I said before, you never can tell where a coach might show up. They don't understand that it's really about us, not them. Okay, that said, final outcome, unless you've just messed up an assignment from Sports Illustrated, let's say, only matters to you. If you like it, if it serves your purpose, if you can say to yourself, that's a pretty good photo, then it is. Well done. Thank you again to the Community Library of DeWitt and Jamesville for this opportunity to present some of my experience and tips to you. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach me at profcard4@gmail.com. And I just want to say thank you again for your time. Remember, it's all mechanical. You can run it back. You can look at it over again. If you want to ask me questions again, that with my email. I hope sometime in the future, not too long from now, we can get together in person for another workshop at the library. Thank you very much.